Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and tonight's show is August the 24th. Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. And it's been an interesting week. Of course we had the eclipse, which I attended for a few different reasons. Some I'll cover and some I won't. And that was an interesting episode, and I'll have more on that just after the intel. We do have some intel tonight. More fun and games. But I played that first song for a reason. Waiting for the hammer to fall. I don't think we have too long to wait for a hammer to fall. And then we've got real fun and games, which will be more beneficial to we the people. So the intel will give some pointers on a show coming up fairly soon. We'll also give other pointers. So much to look forward to. Right, let's get into the usual. The email for the show, truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com, and you can catch the link for this show live on Spreaker.com/user/8955-881. You can also catch the archives on YouTube, the Tommy Williams channel. And we also have the archive of all the shows, including a special section for the biggest shows that's been done, both on this platform and also the couple we did in Cosmic Voice. The Shane interview, the Future of Humanity, the Faction show. I know that is getting more popular now as it's becoming more and more obvious of who's who and what's what. So that's on the articles website, and to find that is thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We have a Facebook social media alternative to the Truth, Honour and Integrity on the Facebook, and that's on MeWe.com. If you send an email to the Truth, Honour and Integrity @gmail.com, if you can't find the page, and we'll add you in. And we have the People's Club donations website link of everything that's going to be happening with the foundation. You can go to that on thepeoplesclub.org. Right, so where are we this week? A couple of things I need to mention. There will be at least 3, possibly 4 special shows coming up soon on various topics. One of them will be Shane the Runer, and more from the Kingdom of Mana, and another I'm in planning at the moment when I get time, which is all an illusion because I don't have any. That will cover the missing gold and how much there really is and who is involved in it and how it all goes back. It's a variant, it's not too dissimilar, but it goes into deeper layers of the financial tyranny. So when I get time, that'll be an interesting show. So apologies for not posting the transcript of the Kingdom of Mana show, but like I said, I've been away for 3 or 4 days and I've barely had time to breathe since I've been back. But special thanks goes to Thomas Zymer, one of the members, for doing the complete transcript for the Kingdom of Mana show. I should be able to post that tomorrow. I get well soon for the researcher and author Graham Hancock. I've actually met Graham at a wake and aware, and apart from his penchant for mentioning ayahuasca too much and drugs in general, he is a good researcher, and he's covered a lot of things. He also called out a few of the rogue elements, rogue speakers that were there that particular day. That was, for those of you who were there, will remember it got into quite a showdown on the stage, with Mr. Hoagland being a topic for discussion. Now this next bit, first of all, if it's correct, and I have reasons to believe or doubt, which is sad, but this is kind of the way certain things are playing out at the moment. But THI would like to say goodbye to William Tompkins, who came into the alternative community recently via a Kerry Cassidy interview, but has recently been siding with the Blue Chicken camp. Now, if it's correct, THI sends condolences to all his friends and family. But I want to preface it because I just hope that this hasn't been used as some sort of cop-out, as the heat was being turned on the Blue Chicken group. And what I find significant is Kerry, who kind of introduced them to the community, has not mentioned his passing on her blog. So William died on Monday, I believe, while I was away. But time will tell. But the pity party and begging bowl tactics over at the Blue Chicken group appears to have no end, and is very low on morals, and it does bother me. But if it's correct, THI sends his condolences for the passing of William Tompkins. And we want to say happy birthday to Tyler Clifton tomorrow. And yes, it is a year, one whole year, since the UPU show, which was a year tomorrow. Boy, time flies. Literally, time flies. Where are we going first? Right, we're going to go into some of the news, and then we've got some intel and a few op-ed pieces and a bit to cover on the event this week that took place on Monday, with all things the eclipse. So you better get your head cleared and ready and your science brains out, because there's going to be a few mind twisters to add to the proceedings. Meanwhile, on the political front, yet another member of the Trump administration has been removed, and that guy, I did say it was kind of under threat, Stephen Bannon, the embattled chief strategist, who actually was a big part in helping Trump to win the 2016 election, but for the many months since has clashed with other senior West Wing advisors, and depending on who you believe, one saying he was fired and the other one saying he left the post. And the White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and Steve Bannon have mutually agreed that last Friday would be Steve's last day. Sarah Huckabee Sanders said in a statement, "We are grateful for his service and wish him the best." And earlier last Friday, the President had told senior aides that he had decided to remove Mr. Bannon, and according to two admin officials briefed on the discussion, but a person close to Mr. Bannon insisted that the parting of ways was his idea, and that he had submitted his resignation to the President on August the 7th. Mr. Bannon leaving, there's a lot of stuff flying around, and I'm going to warn you, I'm going to cover the news as I see it, or as most people will see it, but also I'm going to say, not everything appears as it seems. So bear that in mind. There's things going on, and there's events being reported, and I'll pass comment on the events, but not everything is as it seems at the moment. But Mr. Bannon leaving can have positive effects, as more can actually be achieved outside of the administration. That may be a pointer. Now, President Trump this week, in what is a complete flip-flop, but it all depends on which tie the guy is wearing, so we know which one is which. Some of you will be aware of that, perhaps many won't, but there's two Mr. Trumps. So President Trump announced an expanded US military operations in Afghanistan, but disclosed few details, and that is set to spark fresh congressional debate about the future of the United States' longest war, and whether it's time for lawmakers to approve a new use of force law. Some senior Republicans voiced support for Trump's decision to endorse a Pentagon plan to boost troop levels, and said it will be reviewed during public congressional hearings when lawmakers reconvene next month. But Democrats and some Republicans have blasted Trump for not disclosing more information, and said they will redouble attempts to pass the first use of force resolution since the 2001 Act that authorised military action against terrorist groups in the wake of the September 11th attacks. So it appears now that we are basically sending an extra 4,000 of our people into harm's way, and for what is no apparent reason other than drug money. That's the reason we went to Afghanistan. It had nothing to do with September 11th. The reason we went to Afghanistan is because the previously funded Taliban, funded by the CIA, I might add, decided to go against the American agency and shut the poppy fields down. Of course, that's where their funding comes from for the black budget programs. Now, within 6 months, all those poppy fields were back open. So why are we still there? Is the war going on there? Did I not hear Mr. Obama correctly say it's all over? Like perhaps I mistakenly heard idiot Bush say it was all over, mission accomplished in 2003 in Iraq. But on and on it goes. So the same people who paid, trained and armed the Taliban are now sending another 4,000 troops into harm's way. 4,000 American people. Britain is also sending troops into Afghanistan. 85. Why is it always our soul dyers being put in harm's way? And why are the American people paying for it again? If the Taliban and all the IS and ISIS are all such a problem, why is it appearing that only one country pays for it? So we're still paying for it. Britain sends 85 troops and we're sending 400. 4,000, sorry. But with Trump having called for withdrawal or reduction, this is now, to me, basically a slap in our face. And the reality is, what Trump has announced is basically, he is saying that this country is now under a military coup. Because the military are deciding what goes, not the president. So the president himself, the real one, is apparently unable to make any policies that involves anything to do with military and or banking. None. The American people need to understand our military is not protecting America. It hasn't done it in a long time. Or its people. Which basically kowtowing to scumbag cabal elites. It is what it is. Now this is kind of an entertainment style story, which we don't normally do, but I wanted to cover this because this is not the first time this particular person has been involved in this type of skullduggery. And another woman has come forward with explosive allegations this week against the singer known as R. Kelly. In the wake of claims that the Grammy-winning singer manipulates every aspect of life for several women who live with him. Geronda Pace, now 24, said she was only 16 when she began a sexual relationship with the singer, whom she first met in Chicago when she attended his child pornography trial in 2008, when she was only 15. She says Kelly did not ask her how old she was when she was first invited over to his house in 2009, but told private investigators later that upon being asked, she claimed she was 19. Now, R. Kelly, the reason I've included this is Mr. Kelly was in a Florida home back in 2003. I'd only just arrived, and it was my task to go in after guests stayed there and make sure the house was tidy and do some minor repairs here and there, except after Mr. Kelly left this particular house, he left damage probably in the region of $40,000. This was 2003, and the shenanigans that went on there, there was blood everywhere, female blood, and a load of girls, age 14, all the windows were blacked out with trash bags, so you couldn't see in. They wrecked every stick of furniture, including the grand piano. But he was charged with being with underage girls then, from that incident, and here we are, he's still doing it, and people still go and buy his records, or whatever they're called these days. Sign of age, that records. It's time these sexual predators were dragged in once and for all. Just because they're famous and you've got money should not mean they're above the law. So this is the next story is California, and the Rockland Academy school board is facing tough questions from parents concerned over a controversial incident involving transgender discussions inside a kindergarten class. Really? The parents feel betrayed by the school district that they were not notified of these said discussions, and the incident happened earlier this summer during the last few days of the academic school year. A Monday night board meeting, the teacher at the centre of the controversy spoke out. With high emotions high, she addressed the packed house. "I'm so proud of my students," she said. "It was never my intent to harm any students, but to help them through a difficult transition." Since when are kindergarten kids going through a transgender transition? The teacher defended their actions to read 2 children's books about transgenderism, including one titled "I Am Jazz." And she says the books were given to her by a transgender child going through a transition. This really defies belief, and a further example of the dumbing down of the education system. It's not education in any shape or form. It's pure indoctrination for agenda-driven bullshit. You know, so a transgender person gives her a book, whatever it was about, pedophilia, incest, pedophilia. Is she going to read that out to the kids? Or gassing the Jews, if someone gives her a book on that? Is this the type of thing that we should be teaching our kids? Because clearly these people are not fit for the purpose. They're just not. And if people ever get into a position, the best thing you can ever do for your child is never put it through the so-called education system and homeschool. Hopefully maybe someone will come up with something that can be done via the foundation, because the only way forward for we the people is education. We know we've been lied to left, right and centre. We know most of what we learned, not only in school but outside of it, be it television and films and all kinds of other media formats. Most of it is a complete and utter lie. Maybe in certain communities, some smaller communities, people in the alternative media or community can come up with a curriculum that's going to satisfy children, like how to get by in life as an adult, what plants are beneficial, what plants can you eat, how to be able to be self-sufficient. All those are gone out of the education system now. I was talking about this today. You know, if the worst ever comes on this planet, we end up with a World War III with 80% on both sides lost, which is what the AI program ran, and all the infrastructure gone. The rest of the 20%, particularly in the Western world, wouldn't last longer than a month, because, including myself, we don't know how to live off the land. We just don't know. We don't know what plants are beneficial, what plants are harmful, even going down to mushrooms. I wouldn't know one mushroom from the next. we need to start teaching the children life skills, self-sufficient, not programmed entities. Follow me and just press buttons on a computer and do as the government says. That has to stop. Now, this would be funny if it's not so serious. Well, we mentioned the incident regarding some alleged attacks in Barcelona last week, and one of the more reputable newspapers put out an article this week that a person yet again was involved or lucky to survive the last 3 attacks. But this person's not the first, it's actually the 3rd. How many more times is the same story going to come out, like all the cars ramming into people and the Paris attacks, you know, the London bridges, both vans mounted the pavements and run people down, killed some people and then went and stabbed some people. It's the same story over and over again. Now, this particular woman is called Julia Monaco. She's 26 and was allegedly shopping with friends when a van ploughed through nearby crowds, killing 13 people and injuring more than 100. It was her 3rd brush with terror while travelling through Europe this year, but she was also in the London Bridge attack and Paris. Really? As my admin said, James Godbeer, why isn't she being arrested? But she seems to turn up at all these events. Why isn't the other brunette that has been on virtually every American false flag event being arrested? You can bet your bottom dollar if they saw 2 very alike Muslims at both events, that person would have been skull dragged in and dragged into Guantanamo. Three different people, all at 3 false flags, and the sleepers just ignore this type of bullshit. Unbelievable. And here's more. You want a repeat event? The Navy. More bullshittery, as yet again the damage to the USS, SS being the dominant letters, John McCain, the damage doesn't meet the criteria laid out for an alleged crash. It's got a puncture hole on the waterline. How is an oil tanker going to hit the side of a ship and cause that damage? Has it got a tow bar? It's like the last one. What was it? 6-8 weeks ago? Where another tanker allegedly crashed into it, but the damage was on top of the deck. And again, people just ignore it. Oh, well, that's what they said, you know, it ran into it. 4 times this year, 4 American military ships have been hit this year. You not see a pattern? Anyway, this latest incident happened in the middle of the night, according to sources off the coast of Malaysia. A large tanker filled with nearly 12,000 tons of oil smashed into the side of US Navy destroyer John S. McCain, named after the father and grandfather of US Senator Squirrel Chops John McCain. 10 sailors from the McCain ship are missing, but the vessel is now in Changi Naval Base in Singapore. What I find extraordinary is that's the 4th time this year. So something is clearly going on in that region. Perhaps I should have played the song Goldfinger. It might fit. I remember this incident well. It was all the rage 3 years ago. The Bundy Ranch incident, where snipers thought they were going to shoot at the police and blame it on the protesters, but it failed as it was spotted the night before and prevented. Anyway, this week the ongoing furore surrounding that event, for the second time a federal jury in Las Vegas, Nevada has acquitted the 4 men accused of taking up arms against federal agents at the ranch of Cliven Bundy in 2014. After more than 3 days of deliberation, jurors returned not guilty verdicts for Ricky Lovelian and Stephen Stewart on Tuesday this week, clearing them of all 10 counts they faced, and defendants Scott Drexler and Eric Parker were also found not guilty of most charges against them. The jury was unable to reach verdicts on 4 charges against Parker and 2 charges against Drexler. Now, the Chief U.S. District Judge Gloria Navarro ordered Lovelian and Stewart to be freed immediately and says a hearing Wednesday to decide if Parker and Drexler should be freed also, or if prosecutors will try them for a 3rd time. Give it up. Wasting public money. You shouldn't have been there in the first place. Anyway, acting US Attorney Stephen Meyer said prosecutors have not decided if they will retry Drexler and Parker on the remaining counts. Oops. So after the terrorist attacks in large font inverted commas, here's Britain's response. The London's Metropolitan Police have massively increased spending on weapons as terrorists vow to launch attacks on Britain's streets again. Spending on the Met Arsenal rose 6-fold in the last year, from about £1.6 million, which is roughly ballpark $1.9 million, to £9.4 million, which is around $12 million. $2 million roughly to $12 million increase. That $12 million would have been better spent not on guns for police, but on the public. Yeah. The people who actually give you the money. As calls from Islamic State which was formerly known as ISIS and ISIL, to attack grow louder. Yeah, it only grows louder in the agencies, nowhere else. The news comes as it emerged the Westminster Bridge attacker Khalid Masood was stopped by a bullet to the chest fired by a private security detail, not a police officer. Masood, who was 52, killed 5 people and injured 49 when he allegedly drove a car along the sidewalk of the Houses of Parliament, and the terrorist gained access to the palace grounds where he stabbed Keith Palmer, who was a police constable, to death. Although armed Met Police guard the parliamentary estate, Masood was shot dead by a security officer assigned to the Defence Secretary Michael Fallon. Right, and that's about it for the news. All very tedious, if you ask me. I don't know, it just seems to be rinse and repeat, a lot of it, and distractions, and calls for whites to attack blacks and blacks to attack whites. There's a reason for that. I'll have that reason in the intel. So I'm going to play one song, and then I'll come back with some intel and some op-ed pieces. Let me just... This one will do. Hi all, and welcome back. Right, we're going to get into some intel. The usual fun and games, perhaps even more amusing, because you're going to hear a familiar term. So, the kingdom of Mana is rather close to certain things, certain accounts, certain releases, and the clowns have gone on a massive hacking spree. We expected it, we knew it was coming, because yet again certain individuals spread across our alternative media were announcing another RV, that's regurgitated vomit, or the revaluation of currency for the people who don't know, on Monday, coinciding with the eclipse. So while everyone was distracted, they thought they would play fun and games. So some of the old Federal Reserve accounts, they were pummeling that particular account to try and access it and hack into it to get funds, except it came up with account not found, because they had no access to that anymore. So then that failed. So then they tried the Federal Reserve in New York, and that failed. So they went to the Federal Reserve Bank in San Francisco and tried hacking again, and that failed. And you think one day these people will give up, but no, they carried on the whole day, hacking virtually attempting to hack into virtually every system, all on Monday. I think there was a record attempt at hacking, somewhere in the region of 500 to 600 attempts of various banks and central banks. The European Central Bank failed, Bank of England failed, Venezuela failed, Argentina failed, and they also tried a few of the African central banks, and the result was they achieved nothing. They succeeded in failure again, which is a common theme these days. You have to give them credit where they just keep going and keep going. But their levels of stupidity now, even the most senile will realise after many, many months of hacking into virtually every account, even the central banks. You know, we all think that they're the main cabal banks. The cabal have their funds in those banks. Different thing altogether. But now they keep hacking again. We have managed to record every single attempt, and we have noted down as the who, what, when, where of every single hacking attempt. And the evidence of that will be dispersed to each respective government. Oops. One hopes that they do the right thing, many of them, if not all of them, and arrest these people who are committing high-level fraud against we the people. Those accounts belong to we the people, not them. So basically, everywhere we had gone, they tried to follow and hoping to intercept funds. It failed. There's another clown who failed. Rothschilds again. You know, it beggars belief, because they've been shown all the evidence why certain agency people, CIA 1 and half of CIA 2, just don't arrest these people. As the Rothschilds last week tried to sell all the assets of America again. Only this time they did it on open market, not hidden behind closed doors, on the open market. And they tried to sell it to, guess who? The Middle East and China. Not content with our so-called military Inc. selling all our equipment to China and leasing it back. Now the Rothschilds tried to sell all of our assets. They opened up the bids and no one accepted any bids or put in any bids. No takers. Why? Because everyone knows now of the criminality of the rogue elements of the cabal. All the governments know. This is some of the work that the Kingdom of Manor have done, where we've spoken to virtually every government and alerted them to what is really going on. It's time a collection of countries rounded these individuals up. They're basically stalling humanity. They're not interested in us. The only interest they have in us is making money. That's all. Slavery. When it suits their purpose. Of course, now it also suits their purpose to reduce the population. I think this planet will do rather well, minus the cabal, with a proper education system, with a fair and transparent banking system, with a fair and transparent economic system, fair and transparent government, a proper education system for the kids, a disbanding of the pharmaceuticals and criminal charges labelled against all the CEOs. They know what they're producing doesn't work at best and is poison at worst. They tell you in the adverts. You've got a stomach upset, and please be aware that the side effects of the stomach upset is diarrhea. Hello, isn't that what a stomach upset is to begin with? May cause death. So you have an upset stomach, it can give you an upset stomach and also kill you. Well, I suppose it gets rid of the upset stomach, but it gets rid of everything else also. and we have brainwashed people buying these prescription drugs. It's not sane. So they tried to put all the assets of America on an open market last week, and no one bid on it, as they know. What they did manage to achieve on the 10th of August is they sold all the in-ground oil of Denmark. Told you to watch what's going on in Scandinavia, didn't I? Except they sold it to somebody who didn't have the ability to pay. Go figure. See, the type of people or groups that used to be able to buy these, undo these sorts of deals, no longer have the funds. This is what you've got to understand. They don't have the funds anymore. None. People will argue, no, that can't be right, they own this, this and this. It doesn't matter what they own. Virtually all of their companies are bankrupt. Every government is bankrupt. Every military is bankrupt. The mercenary groups are bankrupt. And they keep swilling the same money around, and nothing new is developing, and it won't develop until they step down. So it could get a lot worse before it gets better. We're approaching rapidly a key financial date, which is September the 30th, when all debts have to be settled. This happens twice a year, March the 31st and September the 30th. Now, today, given the fun and games that's gone on in the central banks in the past week of the hacking, the central bankers are meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I imagine they're rather concerned, because the banks are emptying. The banks in this country have kept going on credit. The American government, or USA Inc. government, since November, after the Rothschilds emptied that account. I hope the central bankers develop an uncanny ability to have some basic common sense. They've been shown the way forward, all of them. They've been shown the proof, all of them. They've been shown the lies and who's doing what, when, where and why. Your game is up. Too many are aware now, too many know, and too many are not going to kowtow to your control system. Simple as. Even the Pentagon, this is the final portion of the intel, even the Pentagon, and there's some special type of clowns in there. There's also a lot of good people, so we can't brush them all or sweep them all with the same brush. Sadly, they appear to do that to the American people, but there is good people inside the Pentagon, and even some of the clowns are now realising, including the lesser spotted or lesser known General Dunford. Wonder if he's actually real. Mr. Dunford. Remember him? What was I always forget the guy that was put forward as who's going to be the big saviour. 4 years ago, before Mr. Dunford, was the new saviour and the new republic's coming in. I'll remember after the show, no doubt. Well, I hope that Mr. Dunford's in there, if he actually exists. Anyway, the Pentagon have figured out now, finally, that the elders cannot produce the said assets to carry out the revaluation to currencies. So they're not paying out on any dinars, they're not paying out on any zims, ding, dongs and dungs, or whatever else they're called. Nil. This is what this particular show host has been stating for the last 4 years. No RV, it's not happening. They haven't got the funds to carry it out. It's because the new system is partly in effect. You have to have the proof of the assets to then deliver the deal. They haven't got any. All of it has largely been reclaimed via various raids on offshore accounts. And the trust has taken back a lot of those stolen funds. They're also demanding back a lot of the unreturned funds. So the Rothschilds are completely bankrupt. I don't think, even with all their wealth parceled together, they've got sufficient to pay back the 2.2 quadrillion, which is 27 years global GDP, back to the trust fund. And yet we have people in our military who think they're some sort of god that we should be bowing down to and following their every order. Those days have gone. But the position is the people in the Pentagon are facing is the deep state. There is some in the Pentagon and there's some in various other places. And there's also the people that most of us have never heard of and never see and don't know, who are pulling the strings. But the Pentagon is now being pressured from the American factions, mainly the Nazi group and some of the Zionist group, to enforce or implement martial law. Of course, I had mentioned this in previous shows. That's what they were planning, that's what they were trying. This is what all these incidents are about. They're desperately trying, like what happened in Missouri, Ferguson, was it? What happened in Charlotte, and what happened in Georgia a couple of months ago. Anything to induce a major riot, which will then escalate into other cities so they can wield out martial law. This is what all this bullshit, it's agency script, even in the agency state, trying to drive the American people against each other so they can then go, oh, well, the police can't handle it, we'll have to bring the troops out. But it won't be US military troops, because they're not allowed to interact on our soil, contrary to what most people are aware of. It'll be the mercenary groups or the UN. And it's important, if the members or the people that listen to this show only do one thing, it's to dampen down the bullshit of the divide and conquer. I don't care whether you don't like blacks or you don't like whites or you don't like Hispanics. It's irrelevant at this time. I also don't care whether you don't like Muslims or not. They're not the problem. It's the same script. I spoke about it in the first hour, about the same script over and over again. It's like the cabal hacking, and it failed. It's the same script. Problem, reaction, solution. They want a solution. They create a problem, so let's wield out the funny looking hat people with eyes in the cone heads. I mean, how ridiculous do those people look? Do these people not look in the mirror? Walking around with a pointed cloth on their heads with eyes. They look like prats. And they wheeled them out. Let's create the problem. And then they wait for us, we the people, to react to it. Oh, those nasty fascists, oh, those nasty blacks, oh, those nasty Hispanics, oh, the nasty Russians, nasty Muslims. No. Nasty agencies. The script writers. They're your problem. It always was. Problem, reaction, solution has been played over and over and over again. Do not fall for it. No matter what story is put out on the news, it may be a new false flag. Oh, and it's obvious it's a Muslim, or it's obvious it's this and that. Ignore it. It's all script. All of it. Charlottesville. Script. The picture that was posted. It's all copy and paste. But they know so many people will react to it. Blame the fascists this time. Or white supremacists. Who came up with that? Well, we told you last week in the show. Sons of Malta, i.e. Knights of Malta, i.e. rogue Freemasonry. The centre of which is in Charleston. And the layout is in Washington, D.C. It's no coincidence. P2s out of the Vatican. These rogue Freemason groups. They're some of your deep state people. Don't fall and play or provide the reaction, because they'll give you the solution and it won't be pretty. Their last chance saloon is riot, because then they'll be able to implement what they want, and they know the large portions of the public will back down. They did it in Boston. Cops went knocking on the doors demanding, give me your guns, and people just handed them over. Right, so that's the intel. But please do not fall for the rhetoric. I'm hoping our listeners and members are able to see through it now. So, where are we next? Some op-ed. So I went to the eclipse. We stayed in Savannah for a couple of days, and then drove north into Charleston, and then on to a location a bit further north that was in the centre line of the totality path. Was there fun and games? Yeah. There was a lot of fun and games. And the first fun and games was right along the path, for as far as the eye can see, was the hammering with the chemtrails, attempting to block the whole sky out. They literally hammered the sky. At one point I could see the clouds in 4 different layers. Generally you see a high veil cloud and a lower veil. There was 4 layers of cloud. So if they're going to block the whole sky up, it means they're covering something up, isn't it? It's fairly obvious to deduce that. So what are they covering up? Well, they didn't cover everything up, because I saw sufficient it's going to make people think, because it appears it's going viral and people are noticing things a lot more than they used to. People are noticing suddenly the chemtrails was obliterating the sky. So they built it up in one aspect, and then put the chemtrails right in your face. And this is a further evidence, like the Ouroboros, where they're chewing from both ends, and they're being exposed from both ends. So there was a massive storm about 5 miles west of where I planned to go, and so I had to head back towards Charleston to actually see it. This is my second solar eclipse, full solar eclipse. The last time I never even seen the sun for 1 split second. It was completely clouded over, although I did see totality, and I saw the shadow racing across the ocean as it was right on the beach. That was back in the UK in 1999. So I did actually see the sun this time, which was good. What I didn't see was the moon. I didn't see the moon before, and I didn't see the moon after. Yes, you're not going to see the features, but then why not? When the object is covering the whole of the sun. But once it's come out of the edge of either side, we should have been able to see it approaching the sun. And we certainly should have been able to see it when it went right across, except it wasn't there. So if anyone's got pictures of the moon for that day, please send them, because we didn't see the moon. Now, I put in a question earlier this week, and the key to it is the moon and the sun rise in the east and travel west. So why is the shadow travelling from west to east? Well, the bright sparks at NASA, never a straight answer. Or let's have their real term, Nazi agency spouting ass. Because they sent some clown, in fact 2 of them, one on a radio station and one on TV, because that very question was asked on on the day. And NASA's answer was, the moon spins twice as fast as the Earth. Really? So, to work that out for you, the Earth spins round the Sun and it takes 24 hours. One day. NASA told us the moon spins twice as fast. So that means it goes around the Earth in 12 hours. So that means the moon must rise and set twice in one day, which it clearly doesn't. So NASA are talking out of their ass again and lying through the teeth again. People have got to remember, NASA came out of the paperclip. The first word tells you who they are. National. As in nationalists, as in Nazis. Of course, the most famous one in NASA was Wernher von Braun. Almost classed as a national hero here, and people are forgetting he's part of the SS. So we'll ignore anything that NASA ever says, including their 15 days of darkness in November. They've been pulling that stunt for the last 10 years. But here's another conundrum. In fact, there's two. Every known diagram about how the sun operates. Oh, let me just check. I'm getting messages. I told you, John, didn't I? Right. Every diagram you'll see about how the sun radiates and how the Earth is in front of it and the angle and all that stuff. The radiant of that comes out of the sun is always at 90 degrees. So in other words, it's a flat line. And yes, when it comes to an eclipse, they draw it not two flat lines. No. So it's not 90 degrees, complete vertical lines. No, they draw it as a cone. Again, another lie to fit the narrative. Now here's the biggest problem. We'll take NASA's words again, and the science community. Ballpark, they say the moon is 2,600 miles across, if memory serves me correctly. It's roughly 2,600 or 2,700 miles across. So that's the full diameter of the moon. Fine. And it's also 238,000 miles away. Fine again. So if the moon is 2,600 miles wide, then when the sun is shining on it and it blocks it out, the moon should cast a shadow of 2,600 miles. So the path of totality should be 2,600 miles. except it's not. It's only 70. So why is the shadow only 70? Well, there's can only be two things. One, the moon is only 70 miles wide. And two, it's a lot nearer than they make out. As in, less than 3,000 miles. As it doesn't make sense. Now the other thing is to do with shadows. Because it doesn't matter what time of the day, you can create a shadow with an object. Now the laws of physics determine that the shadow cannot be anything less in size than the object. Now, many times you see people on the beach as the sun's going down and the shadow, and it makes the people look about 12 foot tall because of the angle of the sun. So the shadow can only be the same height as the object or more. It can't be less. It doesn't work that way. Shadow is equal to the size of the object or more. So if the moon is only casting a shadow of 70, then it could mean that the moon may only be 35 miles wide. And because of the angle of the sun, it's doubled, like the pictures of people on the beach. So now we have a problem, don't we? What are we actually seeing? Like I said, I've checked quite a few. With my own eyes, I did not see the moon. It's not there. So what is covering and blocking the light out? I think you may find that there's a few possibilities. The black sun is blocking it out because we're apparently the only system with one sun. Most other systems have two or more suns. Now it was rumoured that Saturn was once a sun in the past. Or we're seeing evidence of a rogue object within our solar system. So I will try and find out more, but for what I saw on the day, and I couldn't see it with the naked eye, but I could see it through the camera. And this was roughly around when the object was about a quarter across the sun. So there's still 3/4 of the sun visible. And it got to... I watched it play out where a beam came down from the sun. It was like a pencil beam, like the width of a cigarette, and a dark beam next to it that was about 2 inches wide. There was a lot of oscillating to and fro, like a battle between light and dark, which I did put in a post, I did expect fun and games, and this dancing battle took place between the beams of light. An energetic beam went into a light beam, and it expanded and knocked the dark beam out altogether. Then what was pencil thin was suddenly 2 inches wide, pure white light, and a vast beam pouring down. What that entails remains to be seen, but the dark shadow was defeated. Now, was there any strange effects? Yes. I was literally felt like I was moonwalking. Everything was lighter, and my whole body was vibrating for 30 hours after that particular event. So they did everything trying to block it. You see what they're up to. They've lied on what actually takes place, and we've had more disclosure that what we've been told to do with the eclipse is complete and utter bullshittery. And despite all that, people are now starting to see it. So that was my my eclipse day. I didn't get to see the Ring of Fire, which I really wanted to see. They really clouded the sky over. The minute the disk went over the sun, the whole sky clouded over, though we did see the totality, so that was cool. And the light came back. A couple of more things I want to cover before we have a music break and some questions. I keep seeing the term, and I find this offensive because, again, it creates a divide and conquer. I am a Trump fan, is the term that's bothering me. And yes, you may like Trump because you're one political party over another. But since when did we make politicians part of a rivalry where you are a fan? That's for sport, not politics. I'll become a liker of Trump if he delivers what he promised, no matter which version's there. Drain the swamp. That's what it got him voted in. We're 7 months in, and the entity running around known as Clinton is still carrying on. Of course, the entity known as Clinton has apparently written a book from her grave, and there's one particular item that I came across. I wouldn't read too much. I'm not particularly interested in her life story or death story for that matter. But she said she was talking about a debate with Mr. Trump, and she said, "My skin crawled." Oh, nice terminology, Hillary. That's what happens when you've been dead near 12 months. Your skin does crawl with bugs. You make the whole populace skin crawl with your antics. Mr. Schwarzenegger, movie extraordinaire, to bogus politician in California, has decided to chime in, given he's also got a Nazi background. This particular item kind of beggars belief, but he's complaining now over the Nazi flag, stating marching with that is divide and conquer. And I actually agree. We don't need flags. But if that is the criteria for divide and conquer, as he said, that particular flag was responsible for the murder of millions, should we also consider, if that's the criteria, lowering stars and stripes? That may upset some Americans, but it's also been actually responsible for more murders than what the Nazis did. Whether we like that fact or not, it is the truth. 81 countries invaded since the Second World War. Afghanistan, 16 years. Iraq, basically, apart from a brief stint, since 1991. If you're going to talk about removing one flag, you have to remove them all. Flags are symbols of war, including the stars and stripes. It's not American, it's a British flag. War. The gold fringes. Something came to me, and you think the transgender teaching of children was bad enough. But there's an often said and read and sang nursery rhyme that was started in the 18th century for children, and you'll recognise it once I say it. But it wasn't until I looked at the words I realised how much it's used in movies, books, songs by many, many different groups. And it's this: now I lay me down to sleep, pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, pray the Lord my soul to take. All sounds very innocent, doesn't it? Except when you find out the Lord is Anu, head of the Draco. Let's look at it again. Now I lay me down to sleep, I pray to Anu, my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Anu, my soul to take. See how easy consent is? And an innocent, something that appears also very innocent, and suddenly you add the correct terminology. Lord is Anu. The Lord in the Bible is Anu, head of the Draco. So basically, in your nursery rhyme, you are praying that Anu can take your soul. And should I die, I pray Anu does take my soul. Perhaps we should start looking more and more at those nursery rhymes, methinks, as they're far from innocent. Where are we next? Some music, I think. Yeah. given we had Eclipse Week, we'll have a couple of Eclipse songs, or type songs anyway. We'll be back shortly.
And your host for this morning, Journey.
Hi all, and welcome back to the question and answer portion. A little bit of an update on the Intel. The bank that tried to buy, or the oil company that tried to buy all the oil in Denmark, was Total. And a bit like the Rothschilds and the Chinese elders, their revenues are nowhere near what was required. So now you've got large corporate oil companies who don't have the funds to purchase. How much more evidence do you need that they are in dire straits and total collapse? So Denmark's not a particularly big country. I don't think they're a major player in the oil output, and yet a company like Total couldn't buy it out. And the bank basically couldn't support the amount that they required, and so the deal was off, which is good for Denmark, and I hope their government or people of Denmark realise what they're doing and take actions, because these clowns have attempted it in virtually every country, trying to steal all in-ground assets. This is the backdrop to the Paris alleged climate treaty. It's nothing to do with climate, it's to do with the UN, the bogus version of UN, there is two, trying to collect all in-ground resources of every country, so then they have control of everything. Well, they can go and kiss my ass and everybody else's, so they're not getting it. And that is why America pulled out of the Paris Agreement. There's been other Paris agreements in the past that have had rogue implications. I will cover that in that financial show that I've got coming up. Now, there's another issue with another bank that's appeared out of nowhere, and the bank in question is called Wegelin, and it operates out of Switzerland, W-E-G-A-L-I-N, and it went out of business, and the Raiffeisen, R-A-I-F-F-I-E-I-S-E-N bank, who they should be operate London now, but it's still showing up as Wegelin. So they're setting up what appears to me to be rogue banks and rogue accounts. Yet again, it's high level fraud and corruption, and yet again it's time the country's involved, Switzerland this time. Of course, Switzerland has been a den of iniquity for far too long now. All the Nazi gold ended up there in Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand. Wonder why so many American destroyers are in the East. Not all is as it seems. I did tell you. So, for those of you who listen to the show regular, I tend to say things ahead of time. 4-year loops and all kinds of other stuff. Two worlds, and I made another prediction this week on Monday that one of our treasured members on the page at Truth, Honour and Integrity, John Bryan, who happens to come from the same city I was born in, and he's also an Evertonian, which makes him an all-round good guy. And his wife is overdue, and I told him that she would deliver during the show. And lo and behold, I've just received a message from John that Laura has gone into labour, and the baby should be due in the next hour. So THI, on behalf of THI, congratulations to John and Laura on their first child, and I hope all three are doing well. Right, where are we now? Some Q&A, I think. Got some interesting ones this week. Let's start off with this. Can you define what a psychic attack is? Is it the same as a mass group of people sending out negative vibes to someone? It doesn't necessarily need a group of people. If people are in tune with their abilities, it can be done by an individual. It can be done over many thousands of miles for people who are in tune with that ability. And basically what happens is the individual who's perpetrating the attack will thought form a bundle of energy and throw it at the person who they wish to attack. Now, most people, or most attacks that I've been aware of, generally the target is the head, in between the temple and the eye. It's generally over the left eye, generally, not always, but most times it's over the left eye. So it's the people who have those abilities can interact with other people who they don't particularly like. Now, of course, you can get groups of people with that ability, and they can not only cause you a large headache, but can also render a person dead with the same ability, the same thought form. And this is part of the magic. Shane covered it in a recent show. They are aware of some of the abilities that we all have, but they just, as Shane said, they believe in it. We don't. We want to see something manifest in front of ourselves, you know, to then be proven. Is this right? Is it wrong? So that is the nature of a psychic attack. It's thought form energy, ball of energy, designed to hurt or maim a certain individual. It's like a migraine, only it's an intense pressure on the side of the head. It's far more prevalent than people realise. They can also use it to cause heart attacks for those who have weak heart issues. So you can defend against it once it's happened very, very quickly by using your own thought form of packaging it and return to sender. So you bundle that energy back up and force it out of the region of the head it's located, and force it back, return to sender with your own thought form. They won't do it again, providing you put enough belief and force in it. I've had a number of those type of attacks. They won't do it again, the ones that have sent it. including one recently, who suddenly went off the internet for 2 or 3 days. I wonder why. Anyway, if so, wouldn't scumbags like the Clintons and Soros be obliterated due to millions manifesting it? Well, it's funny you should mention those two people because they're both dead. Clinton died on September the 4th and Soros died in November, and they can tell you that they're still operating, still running around, they're lying. They're either clones or doubles. The real Clinton and Soros died last year. I never felt to participate in any mass meditation or whatever action. I felt it was not for me, but until recent I thought Cobra to be one of the good guys. You've got me thinking it's like the hijacking of the political left wing. It seems the bigger part of the spiritual world is hijacked. Yes, they've been hijacking it for a long time with various programs, various entities being involved. The ET side of things has been damaged by the Blue Brethren group, which I will cover a bit later. And now of course we've got the Blue Chicken group, whose sole purpose is to make light of it and make money off it, marketing. And of course the original spiritual world was hijacked by the East, because the original spiritual writing and teachings came from Eastern Europe. The Vedas, nothing to do with India or Tibet for that matter. The Aryan Vedas. And then of course you had, again something I will be bringing up soon in another question, the New Age movement. And people think the New Age started in America and in Woodstock and all hippies and let's smoke pot and free love and all that stuff. Love the world and forget about everything else. But the New Age movement was started and written by Madame Blavatsky, 1800s. That program was called New Age 1.0. And you all thought New Age was the last 50 years. No. So the spiritual world has been hijacked more than anything else on this planet to take you away from who and what you are, to make you pray to the Lord, Anu, even worship Jesus. Some people, a lot of people think that's the way to go. It's not what the guy told you. Don't follow me, he said. Follow yourself. You have the same abilities as I. Shane brought that up in his last podcast. The worshipping of anyone outside of yourself is you hijacking your own self. Because it's taking the you, the creator being, the source being, the spark of source, and putting somebody else on a pedestal. So we've, not only have they put in the programs to hijack the spiritual world, but we've also reinforced it through ignorance. Ignorance of no knowledge and ignorance of not taking the time to go and learn about it. I was wondering you might be able to comment on cryptocurrencies. I thought I did this recently, on the blockchain tech. the financial gurus on the internet, oh dear, are all going full crazy. Well, they will do, because they're bogus RV. Most of those, let's get it right, most of the financial gurus on the internet are paid agency shills, period. Most of them. The ones that aren't may produce some very intelligent, if you're trying to understand banking, it's not easy. That's why we brought Jim Milley on to explain some of the things. But they're basing their predictions on the open market, when all the deals are on the black screens behind that the public don't get to see. And I've said before, like Wall Street, there's a back door in it. The clock is 4 to 7 seconds slow. So they're ahead of the game. So anything that they're going to lose heavily on, where they can jump in and buy or jump in and sell, they are ahead of the game at every turn. But these gurus pushing the RV and the dims and dongs and zims and dungs and whatever else they call it these days, they just change it. It's a bit like all the rogue terrorist groups, ISIS, ISIL, is. Yeah. Maybe one day it'll be called Langley Eye. There you go. So, yes, they're going full on crazy. Cryptocurrency in itself, think about it. You have a non-asset backed currency that they just made up, a group of people just made up themselves. We have a bogus currency called the US Federal Reserve note, which is actually being passed off as being valid. And so they then take the notes off you, which is still legal currency, and give you fresh air. And people think that's valid. It boggles the mind. I know there's a lot of desperate people. There's also a lot of rogues who would take advantage of desperate people, and that's what sickens me the most about the alternative media. There's elements which we've covered before, people taking money under false pretenses for the truth, or doesn't matter if the truth or not, just make up a load of shit and pass it off. And there's good people in the community giving good money to these selfish wannabes who are stealing. It's theft. The dinars, Bush scam. I said that on Cosmic Voice 4 years ago. They raided Iraq, they emptied all the banks, printed a load of other dinars off, not even the original ones, and then got clowns on the internet, paid clowns I might add, because some of them have already been arrested and charged and jailed, to sell them to people on the idea that they're going to get 15 or 30 to 1. It's just wrong. And these people have been pulling this stunt. I watched part of a documentary recently. Again, people think this has just been going on recently. But the military who were involved in Iraq were also involved in Hawaii. after the Pearl Harbor. And most people won't be aware of it, and I wasn't until I read up on it to make sure it was correct. But during the war, and before they decided they would have fun and games and obliterate Hiroshima and the other place in Japan with nuclear weapons, Nagasaki, the American military brought printing machines to Hawaii because they were frightened Japan was going to take over the island. Their words, not mine. And so they came up with this bright spark idea of creating an Hawaii dollar, and it was written on in bold print, and made all the people of Hawaii hand in the US dollars, and they were given the equivalent in this bogus currency called the Hawaiian dollar. Then came the kicker, because they collected 200 million US dollars, 1941, 1942. It's a lot of money now. Never mind then. Then the military came up with another bright spark scheme, is Japan would attack and steal all the money, and they couldn't risk Japan claiming the 200 million. And so the military set fire to 200 million US dollars. Yeah, right. And this is the type of fun and games that's been going on. 200 million US dollars they took off the Hawaiian people and gave them pieces of paper. And people think dinars and zims are all valid. It's not. Bogus. Now I'm aware, and I've said this before, of a deal with a top royal, not British, who had 7 quadrillion of dinar, roughly 12-18 months ago, and a deal was struck to buy that 7 quadrillion for 3.4 quadrillion, and it was agreed, and at the last minute the said royal pulled out. But what was going to happen was the 3.4 or the 7 quadrillion dinars was going to be set fire to, every last note, to stop the scam. So if you still think all these bogus currencies are valid, you really need to do some more research. It's just, again, it's pulling the same stunt over and over and over again, and the people fall for it. Can you share your knowledge of the Black Sun? Well, I've got some of my own knowledge in here, and I like to give credit to certain people, because Robert Phoenix, I think he's been on Randy's show, wrote something today, funny enough. I thought, I'm going to add this in and then expand out on it a bit. But the Black Sun is the sister to the sun we see in the sky, and there's the solar cult people. I mentioned it in an update this week. The Ra's, false solar god, the children of the Black Sun, it's a cult linked with the black-eyed children. And this is what Robert Phoenix wrote. Cult of the Black Sun and its relation to the Thule Society, which gives you the hint. Hyperborea, Agartha, and Middle-earth. Now, Thule was linked with the Nazis. That I do know. And they are also part of the Aldebaran group. Aldebaran. And according to members of Thule, this is Robert Phoenix, part of his post, there exists within the centre of the earth a black sun that warms the inner spheres of the planet. This black sun produces an energy called the Vril. Some people have heard of them, the Vril girls and the Germans again. That is compared to Chi, Ki, Ojas, Orgon and astral light, etc. By channeling Vril, or the energy of the black sun, men and women could achieve great feats. Again, this comes down to the dark magic. They're aware of it, believe in it, and try to obtain it via channeling. That, again, now you know why we told people to stay away. Because you're not bringing in good entities, you're bringing, at best, the AI, at worst, some of the most hideous demonic beings you never want to meet in multiple lifetimes, never mind one. So, Peter Moon wrote a good book called The Black Sun, for those of you who want to do some research. And basically, he, paraphrasing some of his book and some of Robert's post, says 500 million years ago, the Aryans, known as the Elohim or the Elder Race, began to colonize our solar system as Aldebarans became uninhabitable. Sound familiar? Marduk, existing in what is today the astral belt. Marduk was the name of a planet as well. They were keen of giving themselves titles. Of course, Marduk also played the false solar being like Ra. Maybe it's the same entity. Was the first to be colonized, and then Mars. Then they came to Earth. The Aryans were known as the Sumerians. The descendants of Aldebaran supposedly colonized the northern areas of Europe, including Iceland, Ireland, Scotland, Scandinavia, Spain, Portugal and the Basque, Spain. These are the Celts, who also sport more Rh negative blood than any other group. Again, we've covered this previously. And a guy called Sir Edward Bulwer Lytton wrote about the Thule in a book called The Coming Race, which was read enthusiastically by Helena Blavatsky, who penned the book Isis Unveiled. Oops. See how it all plays in the story and the script line, and just gets rewrote for a different era and replayed. Now, Isis Unveiled became the blueprint for the Theosophical Thought and the New Age 1.0. And people think ETs are not real, and we shouldn't talk about ETs because we really need to focus on humans and people on the ground. Except they're the ones that are playing the games. They're the string pullers. Or were. Not as much now. What are your thoughts on the 5G network? Disastrous and should be removed, and will do likely. And is CERN does CERN have connections with chemtrails? Not to my knowledge. As far as I'm concerned, CERN was prevented from doing anything that would be severely damaging in any way back in September of 2000, or in fact it was August 2015. Yes, they'll tell you this is firing up and this is going and that's going, but not for the purpose they wanted it. Are the PSI generators that Levashov had identified still a problem? I'm not too sure on that question. Not too sure on the answer. Here we go again. The episode of Kingdom of Mana was very hope-giving, as it shows how the control is taken back legally and the treaties are being voided. That's correct. But then I listened to an interview from Daniel Lists with a person called Ilana Freeland about a space fence being secretly built by the military. Do you think that the military is operating completely on its own without being controlled by families or factions or the DP or C levels? Let's answer the second part first. Space fence. This has been thrown up many times, and it depends what you mean by space fence. Now, the Earth used to have a grid, a white lattice for those who could travel out of body and view from above. It's now gone. So if that was the space fence, so you got to remember, when it's, again, they're talking about something that's the future, it's always the past. So there was a grid, and that was removed. Now, the military, again I presume he's talking about the USA Inc. military, also known as the military industrial complex, which comes under the guise of US military, but it's not really. It's nothing to do with America. It's like NASA, or the Federal Reserve, or the IRS, or all the other acronyms, are nothing to do with America. They operate outside of it. District of Columbia, nothing to do with America. It's a separate state. So they are controlled by families, the factions, and the parents and the covens. They're not controlled by the Draco anymore, because they're gone. I don't care who says they're here or there, they're not. So I hope that answers that question. But something kind of disturbed me. Because this is the second person in an interview recently. And Alana Freeland has been a Rudolf Steiner school pioneer, teacher, lecturer, storyteller and writer, which means she was a Waldorf teacher. Like I said, this is the second in the last month of people who have come forward to do interviews from this Waldorf, Rudolf Steiner school. I see patterns, and I don't like what I see. So, what is a Waldorf school? Well, it was created by Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner, in the 1800s, took over the work of Madame Blavatsky. I think most of you are familiar with who she is now. Now, Blavatsky was one of the original members of the Blue Brethren group. The policymakers, the liars, the shills and the trolls sent out into the alternative media. This group's been going on a long time. Now, Rudolf Steiner was also a founder and leader of the following. He had an independent esoteric school of the Theosophical Society founded in 1904, and this school continued after the break with Theosophy, which was disbanded at the start of World War I. A lodge was then created by Mr. Rudolf Steiner called Mystica Aeterna within the Masonic Order of Memphis and Mizraim, which Steiner led from 1906 till 1914. Steiner then added to the Masonic Rite a number of Rosicrucian references. He was also a part of the Ordo Templi Orientis in 1906 as the Deputy Grand Master, OTO, and also the Golden Magic of the Golden Dawn group. And these people in Waldorf, this is where all the Rothschilds go. In fact, if you go on the Waldorf site in New York, you'll see a testimony by Amy Rothschild. Why all of a sudden have we got two Waldorf teachers in the alternative community? I don't like that pattern. Perhaps people should start researching more on who Rudolf Steiner and this Waldorf group, as it smacks of another agency related script to me. We'll see. Our emotions guidance for us when we are grounded. Yes, people talk about an inner knowing. Can you discuss the ways to look out for that? We can be guided by our higher self. Can you discuss the ways we can look out for so we can be guided by our higher self? Well, that's an individual thing. Only you know your inner knowing. Asking somebody else to tell you your own inner knowing and your own inner feeling is giving your power away. I can tell you I've been talking about it for over 2 years now, about doing your shadow work and dealing with your the inner work, dealing with your traumas, dealing with your insecurities, dealing with your fears. But I don't know the inner you. Only you know that. And no psychologist or healer or all them people like Bartus who allegedly reads Akashic record. Bullshit. Only you know your inner knowing. So if your emotions are too high, so it's out of balance, part of doing the inner work is work out what induced that emotion. Why did you get angry? Did you snap at somebody? If so, why? Because it's likely an inner reflection of you, more often than not. So you need to get in tune with yourself and not look for somebody else to do it for you, because nobody, I don't care who they are, can do it for you. This is a personal thing. Yes, people can assist and advise, and we do that in the group, but no one can put you in touch with your own higher self. Only you can do that. I believe that today I was hearing a conversation that my higher self is having with someone else's higher self. Is that really possible, or am I off track? No, it is possible. You can also meet your own higher self, or the alternative version of you in the other timeline, or the other world, or the other earth, depending where they are. Because I have met my own self. Kind of freaky. But, so again, that's something only you will know. And so, I think, deducing by the two questions that this person's put in, what you're saying is you don't trust yourself. That's the worst thing anyone can do. Learn to trust yourself. Learn to love yourself. Learn to trust your own intuition. It may appear some of these thoughts are so off the wall and unbelievable and all the other stuff and all the other doubts. But if it keeps happening, then that is real to you, no matter what anybody else says. You know, we had a period, I don't know whether it still happens, but it's not as prevalent now as it was 30, 40 years ago, where people would go to, said they can hear voices in the head, and they were locking them up and putting them in mental institutions. But what if that person was in tune with themselves? So the voice he was hearing was his higher self. There's thousands of people being locked up, declared mentally unstable. But there's lots of people that listen to this show who hear voices in their heads. Learn to trust yourself, please. You have all you need. You're on the right track. Except the only blockage is you. So I hope that helps. As you know, as I know, you only reveal information at the proper time. I was hoping we might revisit some of the loose ends we currently have going on the show. Anything to share about the being or beings responsible for giving humans the phrase crown of creation? There's no being or beings. We just are. I am. We are. It's this again. It's about trusting your own inner knowing, like the previous question. You don't need somebody else to tell you what you already know. It's like the disclosure issue. There's people who have seen actual ETs. There's people who have seen very obvious non-terrestrial craft. But they're still asking, when are we getting disclosure? Why? Because people don't trust themselves. And so what happens when people are incapable of trusting themselves, their intuition and their own judgment? You get people who come along who decide to make the judgment for you, and that's how you end up with a control system. We had all the abilities and we gave them away. There's no question of that. Yes, there was fun and games and messing around, but we should never have gone this far down the tree. So So there's no beings or being responsible for giving humans the phrase the crown of creation. We just are. Some say the original Anunnaki had nothing to do with the Draco King. Well, yes and no. Anu is in there, and Ki is another name for Earth. So it was something that the Draco used to confuse. But Anunnaki are not Draco. Anunnaki are a group of people, a group of beings. There's 5 of them, if memory serves me correctly. Some of them are humanoid. I just described one earlier on, the Aldebrans. That comes under the umbrella of the term Anunnaki. The real story of Radomir, I haven't got round to doing that. Too much going on. Sangreal, we've covered that a few times now. Any info, Phil Snyder. There's not much more that's not already out on the internet. It's his story. I know it's correct. There are tall greys in that region, Mount Shasta and Groom Lake, Area 51. There's a number of groups down there that are not too pleasant, despite what others say. Right, that's it. Is there any chance of us seeing the list Miss Manna talked about with the control structure on? Well, there's no list. The control structure was explained on the Faction show and the Future of Humanity show, and also covered heavily on the Shane show in September of 2015, I think. Basically it was the Draco, and then human 1.0, a lot taller than us, human-like anyway, are the parents who are the controllers on the planet. But the Draco is not always here, and he hasn't been here in a long time, although he can appear to be when not. Then you have the parents were abused and lied to by the Draco. The Draco were abused and lied to by the Abraxans, who were actually humanoid as well. And then below the parents is the covens, of which there's 13. And one of the parents is the head of each coven. So there was 13 parents that run the covens, and then there was 8 parents that made up the 21 group of the parents that didn't operate the covens. And then the next layer down, the covens abused the Illuminati, which was the next layer down. Some of the names we are more familiar with the families, 13 families. There's 2 sets of 13 families. There's the Italian Vatican Roman Church, 13 families, the Medicis, Aldebrani, Brandinis, and all that. And then the other 13 families that most will be familiar with, Kennedys, Rockefellers, etc., etc. Bundy was another one off the top of my head. And so they were the puppets. They were not the controllers, the puppets. And then the next layer down is your politicians, who are even bigger puppets, and the military, who think they're so important, but Kissinger told them, you're just slaves. Well, that's pretty much the whole control structure. Draco parents, covens, 13 covens, 21 parents. There's now 2, and both of them are completely insane and unstable. I think there's 3 covens left when I last asked, and they're playing fun and games. Some of those coven members are part of Gaia TV. Oops. And so this leads into the next question: how to deal with a site like Gaia TV. For somebody who just awoken, it's a high quality content source. I wouldn't know, I've never looked at it for that last particular reason. Of course, after the first wake up call, things keep getting complicated because of all the bullshittery. Different groups are trying to spin disclosure. Yep, and that's all part of how they pull you in. It's the fishing line technique. They'll throw the rod out with a bit of truth on the end of it, and then as they pull it in, suddenly the truth starts vanishing and the real spin and the lies then takes over, and people can either jump off at the first opportunity or they stick with it because they don't want to admit they got something wrong. You'd be surprised the lengths people go to defend a known lie. You know, we all get things wrong. Each and every one who listens to this show does at least maybe 8 to a dozen things wrong in a day. But you just keep defending it. Oh, I don't get anything wrong, me. You spend more energy covering up a lie than admitting you made a mistake and saying the truth. It's like last week I apologised because I made a mistake about Alfred Weber being part of Gaia TV. It was just the way Alfred wrote that article or piece out, and it was a genuine mistake. Some people carry on believing the lie. I chose to kill it stone dead, admit I'd made a mistake, and correct it. And that's the end of it. No more energy. No more having to carry on living the lie. Quite why so many of us cover up so many lies. You just don't. I wish there was a machine that could measure the negative energy it contains, as it might make people think. What are the supposed duties of Pindar? Being a prat, basically. Ego off the radar, thinking they're king of the world. Pindar, of course, means penis. Fitting for the current one and his partner. Was the eclipse a Project Bluebeam psyop? No. Otherwise we would have seen all kinds of craft bombings out of the sky. Cloaking military jets. Can you share any interesting bits on your eclipse trip? Well, I've covered that. Next question. For the first time meditating, I had 3 visions. I had visions in 3 dimensions. Am I growing spiritually? Yeah. When you learn to trust yourself. Last week I also saw my first UFO. Cool. People will there's a lot of people who've never seen them. To me, for some reason or other, it's a common occurrence that it becomes almost every day. I'm not saying I see it every day, but it comes I've just seen that. You know, even I showed you some of the pictures that I took in Utah. I knew they would be there. That was my own intuition, and they were there. I just didn't realise the volume of them. But one particular craft kept popping up that almost looked like a pinkish rose colour, and it was in. I haven't gone through all the Utah pictures yet, but it was in at least 6 of them. It's also in 2 of the South Carolina pictures. Same colour, same shape, same craft. So, next question. Given they had weapons technology far beyond ours, did Eisenhower have any other choice but to cut a deal to allow abductions by ETs? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. The sole interest was that they wanted the military style technology to fight and take on Russia. Top and bottom line of it. They knew the Germans were in contact with the ETs, and why the German scientists developed way ahead of everybody else. Russia were already ahead. They're still ahead, whether people like that idea or not. It's the truth. They're light years ahead of us. So America tried to catch up, because they wanted to wipe Russia off the face of the map. Period. Again, this was kind of covered in some aspects. Perhaps I best not mention that yet, because I haven't revealed that yet. Let's just say I read it in a certain document that perhaps is not available just yet. But that's basically, it was all to do with technology that the Russians and the Germans had, and America wanted it also. So we got military tech, and they were allowed to abuse and abduct Americans. 2% they were allowed, and they apparently took near 10, and it was heading higher until fun and games ensued, and the battle that took place with the tall greys. Phil Snyder was part of one battle. There was others. Did you see the actual moon before or after the eclipse? No and no. Let's see, is any... there were 2 posts were made at the beginning of the week giving warnings of the battle of good and evil. I've covered that earlier. I believe you mentioned from previous shows that the US Department of Treasury, the US Departments of Treasury, Departments of Treasury, blah blah blah, are all different organisations. Yes, there's 6 or 7 of them. Could you please provide us with any links or evidence or laws, codes or statutes for this information if you are able to? I haven't got the documentation, but I've seen sufficient to know it is correct. It's something that they've done over for many things, to and of, for and by. They keep changing one word, and they've done it. They've done it in Germany this week. It's gone from Ministry Justice to Ministry of Justice, and I didn't have time to look into the changes by just adding the word of, but it's cost them, the German population, 16 million euros to change it. which the public's paying for. So that's what they're playing at. This is the issue with Heather Giraffe and OPPT, who are cabal. I don't care what anyone says, they're all cabal. They're stooges trying to attack the real Treasury account, which belongs to the American government, the real American government, not USA Inc. And once certain stooges are able to gain access to the account, the cabal then step in and steal the rest. That's why she's being locked up. It's basically committed high fraud against the American government, because that's the American government account. And she could end up with a very, very lengthy prison sentence. Which of the factions have access to secret space program tech? All of them. All of them. The Nazis are the most prevalent, obviously, for various reasons. All the different factions have access or are known because they were all part of the Illuminati. Again, they'll only know certain portions of it because the need to know is far deeper in the cabal than it is between the cabal and the public. But the Nazis are the secret space program, the secret breakaway group involving Thule, the Aldebrans, the Nazi Bell. This was all developed before and during the Second World War. You've seen the advancements in technology around the world since. So what have they got now? Cloak. They've already rolled out cloaked craft. They could be launching all kinds. There could be all kinds of craft above our heads. If it's operating on a different frequency that our eyes can't pick up, we wouldn't know. Mirror tech is another thing that's being used. They can bend the light. So whatever that object that went across the sun, could be anything. All a projection. Final pass. We get 2 tides every 24 hours. If the moon spins twice as fast as the earth, then does that mean we should have 4 tides in 24 hours? Yep. 2 rises, 2 sets. High and low, high and low. NASA's spokespeople are about as intelligent as some of our politicians, which is not very high, is it? But basically, this is again part of the masks of illusion that I spoke about last year. They're all coming down. People are exposing themselves, and if you're not aligned in the right way, you will expose yourself also. The sadness of life is there's very few real, genuine people. And some people initially may not agree with that statement, but when they think about it, what I mean by genuine people is they're not out to make anything of anyone, willing to help, not willing to lie about themselves to create an ego or an image. Service to others in a non-compensatory way. Just genuine nice people, and there are, but sadly it's very few, because there's a lot of people who are making out they're genuine and then taking money off other good people under false pretenses. And that's in our own community. That, to me, sickens me. So NASA have come out and made a complete and utter fool of themselves. Some of us knew that they were doing that a long time back. Thankfully now, as the masks are coming down and the truth is being revealed, more people are starting to see it. More people are asking the question, where was the moon? It only takes one particular event, and it can be something, it's likely to be something really ridiculous, that triggers everything off, and the public changing. It may just be, where was the moon? Far better than a banking collapse and everyone finding out when it's too late. So, anyway, where I'll be back on Sunday with the return of An Evening with Thomas, and this is going to be an interesting show. Don't forget to tune in. The person that's going to be on is called Randy Dupre, and it's going to be an interesting show, trust me. So look forward to that. That will be on at 4:30 this Sunday, the 27th, Eastern Time. So, other than that, I'm probably unlikely to get. I may get an extra show in on Tuesday. It's unlikely at this point, but we'll see. I'm still waiting for Shane to find some time to have the show, and then we'll go with that. We'll have another excerpt from the Kingdom of Mana People, and we'll have THI version of the Financial Tyranny. That's just three of them. Right, okay, I hope you enjoyed the show. Things are changing. I opened up with the song Hammer to Fall. In many aspects we're waiting. Some of the hammers have already fell, and more will follow. Of course, there was an incident this week in London where a banker fell. There's also the central bank meeting in Wyoming. The final song to go out with is for the bankers, because they have sold us out left, right and centre up to date, and so we're going to dedicate the final song to them. Many of them already have. So this has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.